the next part is the refrain.
Yeah, if you put me in early enough, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
So the record is called Melodies for Maladies. It is a very, very eclectic record in terms of the entire sound. Throughout, it is completely contrasting. At one time, it might be completely intense and completely riff-driven, and then the next, it's got these broken chords. It is influenced by a lot of different sounds, therefore I've used a lot of different guitars, everything from a 12-string guitar to a Leslie to really, really quite heavy sounding guitars. Similar case with the drums and the bass guitar, again, all very, very dark and very sinister, but there is those moments of light in there. So it's written almost like a symphony in many respects of the word. There's a 23-minute song on there, which is split up into 2 parts as well, which is probably the grandest piece I'll ever write. It's just completely outright audacious, but the one thing that I always keep in mind when challenging myself with making this record is that it always suits the concept. I've got the bass guitarist from the last record, which is Alex Broben. I've got a new drummer on board for this record, a guy called Alec Lloyd, who has played for an array of different bands, and his approach to the drums was very, very interesting for this record. He's a symmetrical drummer using 2 hi-hats and 2 floor toms, and it gave a completely different angle to this record as well, which was really, really exciting. I've had Andrew Bishop as my recording engineer throughout, and there's also a couple of guest spots involved as well.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. It's a mind boggle, but I'm happy with that.
The concept of the record, the clue is in the title, Melodies for Maladies. As I was making this music over the past 4 years, it became very clear to me that I was drawn towards writing things that are messed up about the world. The kind of Maladies aspect of the album is split into 2 halves. So the first half is very external, looking at kind of outside problems and taking particular characters of interest, which my illustrator Colin Elgie has done with the cover, is demonstrating all these different characters who have a very, very enormous amount of power and influence. So the first song, Ventriloquist, is about the influence of the media. False Prophet is about the story of Harold Campin, a fundamental Christian who predicted the end of the world 2 or 3 times and failed on all occasions. And then the third song, Burden of Power, is out and out about different politicians throughout different decades who have made decisions about war. Whereas the second half of the album is a lot more internal, which is about depression, it's about anxiety, it's about loss. It's influenced by a lot of different people, such as Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor and came up with a completely different kind of psychotherapy from his experiences. So he was talking about how suffering ultimately brings meaning. Looking at this album, it can all be very negative, but the one thing that I hope listeners will notice as they listen through to it, that there's this gradual sense of hope throughout it, and no matter what suffering that can be experienced in life, it still has meaning and you can still have hope and there's still beauty at the end of it.